Trump, as you've said, has really sort of blown hot and cold on this issue, has been all over the map, and so the call that he had with the European leaders this morning was obviously intended at pushing him in Zelensky's direction at a time when he has shown very mixed sort of instincts in terms of whose side he's on in this conflict.
I think people should remember, should remind themselves that the reason why people cannot say, oh no, actually, Donald, you're so completely wrong, is because he holds all the cards. He's got all the power and he's got all the money.
Let's get the view from Washington, D.C. and welcome to the conversation Molly Ball, senior political correspondent for the Wall Street Journal. Molly, good evening.
Hello.
From us. Hello, it's great to have you with us. I would like your take, actually, first of all, on how this chapter is kind of playing out for Trump. In a kind of with a domestic audience, how is this build-up to the Alaska summit going for him?
It's a good question. I think one thing that we've seen in polls and in talking to rank and file voters is that people generally feel like Trump is spending a lot of time on foreign policy, and the people's focus is much more on their own daily lives, the sort of bread and butter issues, particularly the issues that he emphasized during the election, such as inflation and the economy. And we've seen his ratings on those issues go down, and they're now in negative territory. So I think there's far less interest in what's happening in Europe, or indeed overseas at all, here in America than there is in Europe, and including what's happening in Ukraine. And while the public still broadly supports the Ukrainians, there's a feeling that this conflict has dragged on in a way that has sort of the people have sort of lost interest in it.
Yeah. Does that go for politicians as well? Is there cross-party unity when it comes to how Trump is approaching Ukraine?
No, I wouldn't say that. This is an issue that has divided both parties a bit, but particularly the Republican Party. You still have a lot of Republicans who would like to see more done to support Ukraine, and Trump, as you've said, has really sort of blown hot and cold on this issue, has been all over the map, and so the call that he had with the European leaders this morning was obviously intended at pushing him in Zelensky's direction at a time when he has shown very mixed sort of instincts in terms of whose side he's on in this conflict. But you have some Republicans who are very much in the MAGA camp, who support a much more sort of isolationist pullback from world affairs, including not wanting to see more American dollars or weapons to Ukraine. And then you have the more traditional Republicans who would like to continue that funding.
Yeah. It's always interesting to consider whether foreign affairs and world leaders working on foreign affairs is in some way a distraction. As you say, if there's a perception that a lot of the president's time is being taken up with foreign issues, how does he deal with sort of domestic concerns, the bread and butter stuff that you've been talking about there as well, Molly? Shall we discuss President Trump's nominee to lead the Bureau of Labour Statistics, who's proposed ending releasing this closely watched jobs report each month, which strikes me as one of these sorts of attempts to say, well, if the data doesn't exist, then it can't be bad.
Yes, I mean, this has been a major controversy in Washington, the fact that Trump fired the head of the agency that issues these job statistics, ostensibly for incompetence. We saw, the last several months of jobs reports, which had looked quite robust, get revised downward as part of this agency's normal process. But Trump insisted that this was basically a political hit on him personally, and that he wanted his own person in place. The person that he's nominated has been the chief economist for the Heritage Foundation, which is a conservative think tank, which is best known for having produced the Project 2025 document during the 2024 election. It has supplied a lot of both ideological planning and personnel to the Trump administration. But even many conservative economists have decried this nominee, Antony, as someone who is not who they view as not qualified. They point to a history of making highly partisan public statements, and for a lot of our readers on Wall Street, I think it is also alarming, even if they share many of the administration's, conservative policy preferences, they're very concerned that the data that the government puts out continues to be seen as neutral and unbiased rather than the product of a sort of partisan effort. And many Republican senators have expressed concern about statements such as questioning whether these reports even need to be produced at all.
The White House is also planning a sweeping review of this.
And the Smithsonian Institution is the agency that governs all of those museums as well as the National Zoo. So the Air and Space Museum, the Natural History Museum, the Art Museum, the African American History Museum, they're all quite highly regarded and see millions of visitors every year. But, the Trump administration has really focused on what they see as taking back the culture from the left. And so they're reviewing really all kinds of institutions for any hint of what they describe as sort of wokeness or liberal sensibility or improper diversity efforts. So we've seen them take aggressive action against universities and other cultural institutions. And in the national parks, there's been an effort to review all the signage and make sure that it accords with the administration's view of how history should be depicted. There's a feeling that liberals went too far, particularly in the wake of the 2020 George Floyd protests, in making everything about identity politics and marginalized groups, and they want to bring back a sort of more conservative vision rooted in a pro-American, patriotic vision of American exceptionalism. So, historians are alarmed at what they view as a potential attempt to whitewash history, but the administration sees this as a fundamental part of Trump's political project.
I just wanted to ask you, of course, the museums now have got a certain amount of time before they've got to remove exhibits that, according to Trump, they're divisive and ideologically driven, as you mentioned. But who's going to decide what constitutes something divisive or ideologically driven?
That's a very good question, and I don't think we know the answer to that at this point. This policy has been set out in an executive order and a statement from the administration, and the White House intends to review everything at the Smithsonian. I don't think we know the specifics of exactly how that's going to be done or who is going to make those decisions, or, as you say, what exactly the criteria will be beyond a sort of idea, again, of American exceptionalism and patriotism.
Because you would assume that they might issue some guidance on this. I don't know. I just find it quite interesting that there's
seems like it needs some boundaries, doesn't it?
Yeah, it just needs a bit of clarity, because what I think that might be divisive and ideologically driven, you might think that that's perfectly fine and patriotic. So it's just very interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
Molly, I'm going to take us in a slightly different direction, largely because I'm a massive gossip mongerer. I want to know what you've heard about RFK Jr., because I read this morning that Laura Loomer, the MAGA influencer, or as I view her, as basically backseat president who basically decided to do Donald Trump fires and hires, has her next targets in her sights, which is RFK and his deputy chief of staff. And this is reportedly because his deputy chief of staff has joined a PAC which is supporting RFK's potential presidential bid in 2028. Now, I don't know whether the Washington, D.C. air has gone to his head or whether there's something really in this. What have you heard?
Well, look, RFK ran for president in
Mm.
2024, and so it's no secret that he envisioned himself in that office until he became part of the Trump effort when he obviously wasn't going to win the presidency. So, I read the same report that you did, and the comment from the White House was that they were aware that this was something he might do, but didn't really regard it as a threat. Because when he was in the 2024 race, he was polling in single digits. So the only threat he really posed to either party was as a potential spoiler. I will say, to elevate this just a little bit from the level of gossip to the
No.
to something a little bit more meaningful. I have been wondering whether there was a conflict waiting to happen with RFK at the Health and Human Services Department, because so many of his views are so different from the views of many others in the administration. There's a real ideological clash there because RFK is, of course, a former Democrat and someone who believes in a lot of, environmental causes, and so he has come into conflict with other arms of the Trump administration over, things like food policy and agriculture policy. And there's this ongoing clash that involves Laura Loomer over his appointee who oversees vaccines, which of course are a special passion of RFK, have been the animating cause of his last couple of decades in public life. His opposition to vaccines, which he falsely says are dangerous. So we saw, a Loomer advanced effort to push this sort of vaccine regulator out. And she succeeded, but then he was back a couple of weeks later. Just this week, he's being reinstated. So I think there's an ongoing tension between the Health and Human Services Department that RFK oversees, and some of his more exotic views, and the rest of the administration, which is, of course, quite conservative.
So very quickly, I'm going to ask you for a prediction then. With Laura Loomer's track record, when she shoots, she doesn't normally miss. Are we going to see RFK Jr. making America healthy again after Christmas?
I don't make predictions.
That's a
Matter of
cop-out.
policy. I'm a reporter, and I try to keep an open mind about the future. But we haven't heard that Trump is displeased with RFK. We
No,
haven't.
it's true.
We haven't reported, and I haven't heard anything that would suggest that there's a frustration or a clash there. So that's not something that I've seen a lot of people predicting.
Fair enough. Molly, thank you ever so much. Great to speak to you.
Thank you.
That's Molly Ball, senior political correspondent for the Wall Street Journal.